Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Joe Kaiser, producer for Illinois Rising on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Joe, boy, oh boy, just when you think that the Republican Party in the state is going to present a stark choice for voters in the 2018 election, and frankly, even before in terms of pressure on state legislators, everybody's state legislator, to act responsibly and to not blame Illinois families for not paying enough for this government that fleeces them. You have Republicans this week propose, legislative leaders of both the Illinois House Republican and Senate Republican caucuses, propose a quote-unquote compromise budget, just a reiteration of the grand bargain that was being litigated most of the last couple of months before the end of the legislative session, that would embrace, in part, the 32% personal income tax increase and increase in the Illinois corporate income tax rate from 7 to 9%, this $5 billion plus tax increase was passed on straight party line vote by Senate Democrats before the end of May. Now, the leadership of the Republican Party in both chambers is embracing this as part of a grand bargain, and the governor is indicating he would sign it should they pass it.
No, they shouldn't pass it. And what's amazing is on this show we've talked a lot about the grand bargain proposal from Democrats. We've criticized Senate Bill 9, which proposed increased income tax, the corporate income tax, expand sales taxes on different services. We've criticized that a lot. And then the Republicans put forward this plan. We're waiting for the Republicans to put forward something that's sane, that doesn't intensify the largest tax burden in the country already. And it's essentially the same thing. They're acting like it's some kind of lighter proposal, some kind of reform proposal, because some of these tax hikes are temporary opposed to permanent. That's not the kind of bold solution that you'd want to see in stark contrast to what the Democrats put forward. Is a temporary 4-year income tax hike that's not much different.
To paraphrase Milton Friedman, nothing is so permanent as a temporary tax increase in Illinois. And, I mean, it just muddies the water. Here's the contrast that was available until this week. Bruce Rauner and legislative Republicans are not going to punish you for what the political class has been unable to do. Pay the state's bills, pass constitutionally balanced budgets, be the primary funder of K through 12 education. There is enough money there. This is not a tax problem. It is a spend problem. It's always been a spend problem. It always will be a spend problem. How do we know? Well, for example, the data point that I find jars most people. How high are your property taxes in Illinois? The highest in the nation? Yeah, but additional context. So high. How high are they? You're supposed to be my Ed McMahon there.
How high are they?
They're so high, Ed, that every state that doesn't have a state income tax has lower property taxes than Illinois. That tells you and including a state like Florida, bigger, just as diverse. That tells you it's a spend problem in addition to everything else that we know about taxation and spending and borrowing and spending in Illinois. You don't rack up $250 million in debt by being the fiscal conservatives that everybody claims to be. So why Rauner and legislative Republicans would choose to say, hey, Chicago Democrats, we're not going to let you continue decimating the state alone. We want to help. I'm completely baffled by that. This is, I think, the governor listening to cowardly legislative leaders in the Republican Party and probably some of the North Shore Champagne socialists said that you got to appear reasonable. Rather than putting a marker down, as this special session is to start this week that he's calling, it's to start Wednesday, go for 10 days. He's going to outline what are the must-haves, I believe, on Tuesday prior to the start of that session. And those must-haves are property tax relief, good. Term limits, fine. And then he should keep it open-ended. These are must-haves, and you Chicago Democrat potentates who are in charge of the General Assembly for 4 generations like Madigan, you come back to me with a constitutionally balanced budget that includes these two, and I'll talk about revenue, or you come back to me without those two and a constitutionally balanced budget with no tax increases, and I'll do that. There are your two options. Go to it. Why he would sign on to potentially endorsing this massive taking and participate in the blaming of Illinois families. Hey, you're not doing enough. That's why we have to take more from you. Completely flummoxes me.
And you've made this point before, is that if Democrats are saying it's a tax problem, they're telling Illinois families that you're the problem, that we need more from you. And that would set up a choice politically between Republicans and Democrats. We have one party saying to Illinois families, you're the problem, and then another party saying, no, we want to structurally reform the state. But with this kind of proposal, both options are saying, no, Illinois families are the problem, and we need more from you.
Well, right. And when they both go off in their disingenuous anti-tax messages, they'll both have fodder to say, oh, now you're against tax increases. So you were for them before you're against them, or you're against them before you were for them. I mean, and it dilutes the maverick brand that Rauner needs to have to stoke the revolt to win re-election, and certainly to legislative Republicans need to try and net pick up the 9 seats that are required to depose Mike Madigan. This is exactly why we have the state we have, because of the weakness of the Republican Party and its leadership in the General Assembly. And it's been like that for a long time, and unfortunately it persists.